In this presentation, we are going to look at the French conquest and occupation of Mandinka Empire. The French conquest and occupation of Mandinka Empire. The Mandinka Empire was established by Samori and it was a very strong empire within the West African sub-region. Very influential as well, and also very powerful. Samori was a very determined warrior. He had very good personal qualities that helped him towards establishing Mandinka Empire. He was a soldier, a very effective one, and a good administrator as well, and also a very sound tactician. Well, the major conflict between him or his army, the Mandinka army, and the French started in 1882. This was a clash between the French and the Mandinka army because of the expansionist activities of Samori. In that clash, the Samori's army gave stiff resistance. In fact, as a matter of fact, when you compare the Samori's Mandinka army and the Almadu's Segu Caliphate army, you observe or you know that the Samori's army gave the French very strong opposition, very stiff opposition, and they were tactically better than the Ahmadu's army in Segu Caliphate. Well, the second attempt or the second clash was when Samori sent his brother to take over Bamako in 1883. In that clash, the French also had interest in taking over Bamako. So this led to an encounter between the French army and the Mandinka army led by Samori's brother. And in that war, the Mandinka's army were chased out of Bamako. But the third attempt was the desire of Mandinka's army to take over a gold town called Bore. And this led to a war between the Mandinka army and the French. In that war, the French were defeated, giving Samori the opportunity to take over that gold town. But what happened was this: the Mandinka army lost a lot of men, and this helped in weakening the strength of their army. Well, with this defeat, the French now realized that Samori was not a king, or was not a leader or a ruler that will be pushed aside easily. They made him they looked at him as a very serious threat to their interests in the region. Well, they also realized that they need to take him serious. Well, this development made the French to bring down their interests. They brought in some level of diplomatic presentations or projections. In that diplomatic move, the French and Samori signed peace treaty. While in this peace treaty, the French decided to recognize the fact that Samori's army was a very influential army. The same thing also Samori did for the French. Well, the French wanted to concentrate their energy as well in fighting Marmad Lamine. And Marmad Lamine too was another adventurous leader that was trying to create his own sphere of interest and also political powers. The French realized that in order for them to handle Muhammad Lamine's issue, they have to bring down the concept of taking over Mandinka Empire of Samori Toure. Well, as this as well, the fact that the French wanted to fight Lamine made them also to bring down their push for Segu Caliphate. That we've discussed that in one of the videos. The Segu Caliphate and also the Mandinka Empire were suffering the same thing within that period. Well, in 1886, a peace treaty was signed by the French again with Samori. In that treaty, Samori signed a treaty of protectorate treaty with the French. But something really led to this. The Samori was actually interested in being left alone by the French. For this reason, he signed treaty with the French. Now, he saw this treaty as the fact that he should be left alone to stay and operate in his own territory. And also, in that treaty, he promised not to engage or deal with any other European country. Well, he also expected the French to help him in his own wars. But the French never took serious their own bargaining or their own part of the treaty. So instead of helping Samori, they started to encourage revolt within his territory. Well, the realization of the aims and objectives of the French made Samori to reorganize his military tactics. He increased his effort in buying and storing weapons and ammunition. He as well increased his effort towards getting these weapons and ammunition from another source rather than from the French. He avoided direct confrontation with the French unless it was necessary. He also made good use of his intelligence report. His intelligence capacity was so sound that he was able to monitor the activities of the French, their actions, their projections, their interests, their desires, and their move to take over territories within that period. He was able to monitor them. Well, he made move as well to have an alliance with Almadu, who was the leader as at that time, or the ruler as at that time, of Segu Caliphate. At first, Amadou was not serious, was not interested in that alliance. He wrote a letter to Amadou seeking for this alliance. In that letter, let me read a very small portion of that letter. He said, if you continue to, he told Amadou, he made reference to Amadou, he was telling Amadou that in this war, let me quote it, if you continue to wage war on your own, the whites will have no trouble in defeating you. Let us therefore unite. You will hit the French from the north. I will harass them in the south. And we will certainly manage to get rid of them. End of quote. Amadou was not serious with this alliance. But when Amadou started losing grounds seriously to the French, he stretched out his hand for this alliance. And by that time, it was late for a serious alliance to be formed between Amadou and Samori. However, they managed to put something together, but it wasn't a serious one. Seeing that the alliance that he sought with Amadou of Segu Caliphate could not bring any effect, he looked towards Ashanti Empire. Samori looked towards Ashanti Empire. And this didn't go down well with the British. The British also never wanted an alliance between Samori and the Ashanti king. precisely Perepe, who was the Ashanti Hona. Well, out with the fall of Segu Caliphate, well, it was very sure for Samori that the next major fall within that region will be his Mandinka Empire. Well, but the attempt and the moves by the French to take over Mandinka Empire took a long time, over 7 years. Knowing that he could not have his alliance with Amadou didn't make any sense. He could not have alliance with the Ashanti Empire. Samori reorganized his tactics. He also, realizing the fact that the French were so bent in taking his territory, he reorganized his tactics in order to make it very difficult for the French to do so. His army was divided into 3. One section of the army was given very modern weapons, with which they attacked the invading French army. And then another section of the army was given the duty of reorganizing or to organizing the population of the empire and evacuating them, while the 3rd section was given the duty of conquering more areas in order for them to expand and move their empire. So the method here now was very simple. Any area they know the army could not easily defend, they evacuated the people from that area and moved to new grounds. And as they are leaving, anything that is eatable, any valuable property in that place is taken away. The ones they could not take, they burn them down. The ones they could move with, they moved with them. And then this is a system called Scorched earth policy. So Samori was ordering, or his army were moving the population out of areas, making the places vacant and useless for the French. Well, this brought a level of cruelty in the sense that any area that Samori's army passed, the people suffered a lot of serious, terrible cruelty situation. For this reason, the French accused him of being very cruel to the people. However, we have to realize the fact that this is Samori's tactics to keep his territory or his empire independent of the French. We have to also note that, well, Samori, realizing that the French were still bent in taking over his empire, decided to move eastwards. In that move, he ended up even establishing a new capital at Dabakala. Yeah, he ended up establishing a new capital at Dabakala. However, the empire was not as strong as what it used to be. And then, because of this French invasion and French interest, however, with the French invasion and the French interest, he moved his empire eastwards, and the empire was weak, not as the level of power that they had before. Well, but the French still didn't give up. The French determined to take over and destroy Samori's interest and Samori's empire, continued to move after Samori and his army. They blocked Samori's access to getting weapons from the Sierra Leone area, which was another source of purchase of weapons for him. In order to play the French, Samori approached the British within the Ashanti area, seeking for agreement or treaty with the British in order to reduce the influence and interest of the French. But the British turned down such offer. The British decided possibly to respect the French interests in Samori's territories. Well, in the July of 1898, Samori won another victory against the French at Owe. But that was to be the last victory, last military success of Samori against the French. But after that victory, he attempted to move his territory towards the west. On his way, his army suffered serious famine and disease. This affected the army's strength. A lot of them died. And then by this period also, the army had already run down on weapons. Well, they were able to sustain their supply through the workshops that they established for the building of their own weapons. But it wasn't really enough. Well, a French detachment finally captured him around September 1898. By so doing, his capture determined or meant the total collapse and fall of his interests and his empire to the French. Please subscribe to our channel and click on the notification bell so that anytime we drop a new content or a new discussion in the history of Africa, you will be one of the first to be notified. Thanks for still being part of our African History channel.